Welcome to the Some Insights podcast.
SoMe stands for social media, of course.
I'm Dante Licona, a social media strategist and consultant.
And I'm Matthias Lufkens, founder of Digitips.
In this podcast, we talk to the people who manage social media accounts for organizations and their executives. They all have interesting stories to tell.
The idea is to learn how they're managing accounts, how executives engage on each platform, and hear their tips and tricks. We want to learn from the best cases of social media usage.
Today, we're proud to have with us Kristina Belikova. Welcome to the show, Kristina.
Hello from Vilnius, and thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here on this podcast that I'm a big fan of, actually.
Thank you, Kristina. Kristina is the communications advisor to the president of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda, who only created his Twitter account in November 2018, has become one of the leading digital voices in Europe with a combined following of 380,000 on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads, X, and YouTube.
Kristina, what's your professional story? How did you get to advise the president of your country?
It's a long story. Prior to joining president's team, I spent a significant time living abroad in Brussels, New York, Washington, D.C., working as a journalist in public affairs in international organizations. And then I came back to Lithuania in 2018 with an idea to work for my country, to contribute to something greater and bigger than me. And I was back for a couple of years when I was approached by President's office, asking whether I would be interested to come for a conversation, for a potential role. And then my job interview was actually with the President himself. We chatted a bit, and then in a couple of weeks, I started my new job. So this is how it was. That's the story.
Gitanas Nausėda is a leader of a relatively small country. Lithuania has a population of less than 3 million. How have you built his digital profile?
This is a very interesting question because I think it's different when you're a leader of a small country and when you're a leader of a big country. When you're a leader of a small country, you don't have a large audience by default. You don't have a large following, and also the international community not necessarily by default is interested in hearing what you have to say. So you have to put some work in order to make your voice heard. In our case, President's Instagram and Facebook are oriented at our internal audience, at Lithuanians, because those are the social media platforms that are popular in Lithuania. Twitter, or X, on the other hand, was never a thing in Lithuania. It's not popular, and it did not become popular over time. So we use this social media platform to talk to international audience and to make our voice heard there. And actually, when I just joined President's team, it was before the illegal migration crisis, before Russia's war in Ukraine, and the President's account had around 70,000 followers. And over a couple of years, it grew a lot to over 160,000 followers. And it was a big transformation. And I think there were two main factors that had influence on that. So first of all, the events in the region that were going on that made it more relevant and interesting for international community to hear what we have to say. And second, I think it's a sharp and timely communication by the president on social media that attracted a lot of attention. We see that a lot of interest is on us now. When Russia's war started in Ukraine, a lot of people were saying that we should have listened to Lithuania, to the Baltics earlier, because they were warning us. They were saying the threat is there. And now I feel that international audience is actually listening, and we can see it on social media as well, by the media coverage it gets, by how popular certain tweets get, and so on.
Can you walk us through the process of being the digital voice of Lithuania's president? And does the president sometimes post himself?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that no leader would be able to manage fully all the social media accounts because we have 3 main channels. So it's a lot of work. So the team has to step in and push some buttons. But the president does post himself in some occasions, and at some occasions it's the team doing that. I think the most important thing in this process is to not lose the charisma, the authentic voice of the leader in the way, and to preserve the real voice of the political leader when you were managing the social media accounts. And in our case, the president's social media is 100% the teamwork, a lot of coordination, discussions, and working on things together. Sometimes the president also shares very personal messages about his family or her personal hobbies on his social media accounts. So it's an always a teamwork and a very dynamic environment to work in.
How's the interaction with other leaders, namely on X? The president follows 36 current and former heads of state and government, including former US President Donald Trump. So how do you decide who to follow or unfollow?
Really, there is no strategy there. It's just a very natural process of engaging with people that you interacted somewhere with, interacted online or in real life. And I think in some extent, it also reflects the relationship that leaders have with each other in real life. For example, they have a big friendship or really good relationship with President Zelensky. And you can really see that on Twitter as well, because they do comment on each other posts, they engage a lot, they address each other and things like that. But there is no strategy behind it. It's because the leaders get elected and they change and so on. So it's a very dynamic process.
Our listeners want to know how our guests deal with crisis. I'm sure you have faced many. What have you learned about crisis communications, and are there any practical tips that you can share with our listeners?
Oh, yeah, I can talk about that. Since the beginning of president's term, the President Nausėda had really an atomic mix of challenges and crises coming our way, starting from the pandemic, illegal migration crisis, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, so a full package to handle for the president and his team. So I'll use an example of migration crisis a little bit, illegal migration crisis. So in summer 2021, thousands of illegal migrants from Iraq, Afghanistan, and other neighboring countries were flown by the dictator of our neighboring country, Lukashenko, to Belarus and sent to Lithuania's border to then attempt to illegally cross it. That was something Lithuania has never dealt with before, and it was unprecedented event for the European Union as well. So communication had a crucial role to play in that, because in times of uncertainty, of something new and unknown, it's very important to communicate clearly and use communication as a tool to help you solve the crisis. So based on that experience, my three main tips to leaders' communication in crisis would be, first, to stay calm and show leadership. Second, to communicate timely, very crucial. And third, to target your messages to relevant audiences and take advantage of various communication channels to help you solve the crisis. For the events that you can foresee potentially becoming a crisis, that you can see it's coming, the main thing is to prepare. Even though you can never be ready 100%, but having some kind of algorithm or a plan when the crisis is already at your door is very helpful. So when the security situation in our region was getting worse and worse by the day, and Russia's attack on Ukraine was becoming more and more the reality, it was more and more obvious that it is going to happen. We prepared in advance, hoping that we will never have to use it. We had the communication plan in place if Russia attacks Ukraine. And when it actually happened, unfortunately, it allowed us to deliver president's communication in an efficient and timely manner and address all the relevant audiences on time.
What are some of the highlights of the president's social media activity and, social media moments that stood out for you?
Yeah, I'll maybe talk more about like Twitter or an X, because this is more for an international audience. And we had a couple of hits worth mentioning. So I think the first big digital success was in April 2022, when Lithuania was the first country to fully abandon all Russian gas imports. So we were the first to do that. And it was precisely on April the 2nd, it was Saturday, when it was clear that, okay, we are ready, it's done. And it was nowhere on the news yet. And the president went ahead with the tweet announcing it to the world. saying that from this month on, no more Russia's gas in Lithuania. And if we can do it, the rest of Europe can do it too. And that tweet really exploded. Like, it went viral. It got over 17,000 retweets, around 100,000 likes. It made the headlines. It was everywhere on CNN, on Euronews, New York Times, everywhere. And it really made an impact because it was the first step in positioning Lithuania as a leader, the good example in energy transition, and the topic that was trending a lot at that time. And I think this is an example of how a timely and well-crafted message can make an impact online. Another example that I would like to mention is from last July. As you may know, we hosted a NATO summit last July. And I remember, like, a month before the summit, NATO fellas started tagging President Nausėda in different posts on Twitter, asking, when is the NATO summit taking place? And if it was taking place. So it was this like funny interaction. And after some time, the president tweeted to the NATO fellas, inviting them to come to Lithuania and saying that they would be very much welcome there. So it was very interesting because when that tweet went online, I got a call from a colleague from another institution saying, oh my God, somebody hacked president's Twitter account. There are these Shiba dogs on there. And I was just laughing because, people do not expect this from a political leader, because this was a little bit out of the box and political communication out of traditional ways. But I think it's an example and a great proof that communication of political leaders, political communication online, does not have to be official at all times, overly official, let's say, and it doesn't have to be like boring or dull. There is always a place for some humor, creativity, and just being a human, not just a head and a suit. So on that tweet, it actually gave a push, and the NATO summit actually happened in Vilnius ahead of the NATO summit. So I think this is a great example of an impact that a communication can make. And of course, there was this viral tweet where the president addressed Elon Musk. And it was an also example of more, let's say, playful communication that really gets your political point across, but also gets a little bit out of the way of traditional political communication. And I do really welcome that, because I think it's important to look for new and creative ways. You cannot just walk the old path all the time and expect it will bring you the good results.
You share a lot of behind-the-scenes content through your social media presence, and that's how a lot of people learn about the craft. Can you share a little bit more about your own presence on social?
Yeah, I have decided to talk a little bit more about my role as communications advisor, because I feel like sometimes the perception that people have and what it really is a little bit different. So just opening the door a little bit more and talking about these experiences, eye-opening, I think, to also not overly glamorize this position, because it's a really hard job to do. It takes a lot. So it's interesting to share with the people about it and to share some tips for those that maybe want to be in this position in the future, and to advise them what to expect. And I think in political communication, it's necessary to understand that your skills and competences as a communicator is one thing, but the very crucial thing that you need is being able to build a connection with the political leader that you're working with, because it's essential. When all the buttons click and when you have a great connection, you understand each other, there's a mutual trust, then it's the moment when the magic happens, when you can have really good results. And for me, talking about social media, I think the success of the leader or any person on social media comes when the person is authentic, when the person has a unique voice and just being true to the audience and to themselves. And I would also not measure the success on social media maybe by the numbers or reposts, but more by the impact and engagement that you get. Because it's a social media after all, right? So this is what matters.
Absolutely. And finally, Christina, a battery of questions which we ask all our guests. What is your favorite and most inspiring social media mentor?
Oh, I'm really bad at these. I never have mentors or like one person that I aspire to. I follow a lot of people. I get inspiration from really different accounts, but I could not really highlight one person or one account.
And what about 3 favorite accounts to follow?
Yeah, same. I could not really highlight one, but I can maybe say that one of my favorite accounts is Ukrainian meme forces, where they talk about political things, but in a very creative and humorous manner. And I really like this type of communication. I think that freshes up the social media scene, not being overly serious all the time.
Which are your favorite social media channels for professional and for personal use?
I would say it's Twitter or an X and LinkedIn for professional use. I found that like Twitter actually is so good for connecting with people, building your network, professional network, and even the people that you never met in real life, you can get connected. Like for example, with Dante, we met on Twitter, and I never met him in real life, and you still have this connection where you're able to exchange things, endorse each other, and I think it's very powerful. And there are more people like that I've never met in real life, but we are friends online and we endorse and support each other. And I think this is great also for learning and growing and for potential cooperations, because you never know what life brings and what people you might meet in the future. And for personal use, I do use Facebook, but more for staying in touch with my friends from all over the world.
Do you have a podcast that you are listening to right now?
Actually, this podcast, it's the only one that I listen to. And yeah, I'm not a big a podcast person, especially on professional side. I do listen to some things outside of work. So this is how I relax a little bit, disconnecting from professional topics. But on professional matter, I do really like what you're doing here.
Thanks for the kudos. Do you ever disconnect, and how do you avoid social media burnout?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I did try to go radical this summer. So after NATO Summit, I was so tired of the phone and of all the engagement. So I went to silent camp for 10 days with no talking, no phones, no nothing. So it was an interesting experience. I would not say I really enjoyed it, and I do not want to repeat it again. But I think it's all about the balance. It's about being online for when you need to be and being able to disconnect when you're with your family or friends or doing some other things. So I'm trying to keep this balance. I'm not sure I'm very successful at that, but you live and you learn.
And finally, Christina, in one sentence, what is your social media mantra?
Find your voice and speak with your own voice. That would be it.
Christina Archulabai, thank you for your time and your honest answers.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of our SOMI Inside podcast with me, Matthias Lufkens.
And me, Dante Licona. Please subscribe and follow us on our personal accounts. Goodbye, and until next time.
That's your favorite cause. On our SOMI Insights, hear the pros view. Dante and Matthias bringing insights new. Talking strategies, the wins and the woes. Deep conversations where the real talk flows. From pros and XX, stories come about, revealing